She had a newspaper clipping of me from kindergarten reading a book.
Matt, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here this morning.
Delightful to be here. Thank you.
I really did.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, Matt is not just a bodybuilder. He's someone that's very much adapt to his field of knowledge, which is basically what the body can do and how it can get the way that he's made his. Mm-hmm. And he gave a talk at TAC. It was just last week, and I happened to attend it, and I was blown away. It was fantastic. It was a very good presentation. He covered all the fields. He answered every question was there, and he stayed longer if you wanted to ask even more. So I'm very pleased and honored to have Matt here this morning. He's done several podcasts on his own. So
on various topics. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here. Yeah.
Well, Matt, let's start off with, where were you born?
I was born in the Boston area of Massachusetts, United States. Actually, about 45 minutes southeast on the coast, a town called Hingham, Massachusetts, which is known for a lot of people in the financial district live there and commute to Boston. So that's how and where I grew up. Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have a younger brother, 4 years younger than me.
Just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
Are you guys close?
Not as close as we probably should be. Okay. We are brothers, and amusingly enough, all my friends always says, "You guys don't even look alike." We have certain characteristics that are similar, but we're very different. Body type, face type, hair, eye color, everything very different. We share some interests when we were growing up, but we kind of diverged as we got older. But yeah, we still stay in touch. But of course, he's back in the States, and I'm over here, so it's not as easy as it could be.
How are mom and dad?
Mom and dad are good. My parents separated when I was 4 years old, but I stay in touch with both of them. I grew up with my mom. Okay. So I grew up my mom's side being Italian-American. I grew up that way, despite the Twigg name being very not Italian sounding. Yeah, I grew up that way. And dad actually still I think he's 78. He's still healthy and strong, and he's the one who taught me about gyms in the beginning, and still goes and hits the weights now and then. So,
is that right? So he's always been fit?
Yes. Yeah, he's always been fit and always taken an interest. And that's how, at a young time, how we bonded, actually talking about bodybuilding. And he would buy me books.
So he was a part of your life, even though...
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't remember him as a little kid. I mean, you do remember him, but they weren't married.
I remember him. I have spotty snapshots because I was about 4 when he left. So I remember some stuff, and then remember, the tough times kids have after divorce when one parent leaves. But when I got older, I made sure to put the effort in myself to reestablish the relationship. So.
Did either of them get married again?
Both of them. Actually, my father remarried rather quickly. My mother married when she was remarried again in her 50s, I believe. Yeah.
So you were already out of the house by that time?
I was out of the house after her second marriage.
So she didn't want to get married. She stayed single until you guys were grown.
Exactly, and that was her intent. She started to focus on the kids. That was her thing. So I was over for that, of course.
So you grew up in the Boston area until what age?
I was pretty much the whole time. I went to university at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. And then after that, I came to Japan for the first time in 1994 for just about a month and a half. Went back. And then came back to Japan a couple of years later. But really, I was pretty much always just Massachusetts and Japan, kind of back and forth over the years, over the decades now. Yeah.
That's interesting. So let's get back. When you were young, when you were in elementary school, would you say you were more academic or were you more sports-minded?
I was definitely a little nerd. Yeah, I was the kid who I read Tolkien's Silmarillion when I was 10 years old.
You read what?
J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion, like this Lord of the Rings. And then he wrote a book called The Silmarillion, which is kind of like this back history, which is quite complex and a very fat book.
So what did your mother do? What kind of work did she do?
She worked in a bank. She works at Statestreet Bank.
Did she read to you all the time? How'd you get started?
I think she probably read to me when I was younger and encouraged me to read. She had a newspaper clipping of me from kindergarten reading a book. It's a picture of me. So I don't know how much I was reading at that time, actually, but it looked like I was reading. So, something about it must have attracted me. And I definitely liked a good story that I could get into from a very young age. And I was definitely more of like a bookworm, kind of nerdy kid than a sportsman. I had pretty bad asthma that I've had since I was very young, since I was 8 years old. So that pretty much took me away from any serious sports anyways. I couldn't do any kind of endurance type sports. I couldn't run very much. Even talking, I'll lose my breath a little bit here sometimes. So that was kind of out for me. And I think that probably maybe pushed me a little bit more into the bookworm side. you know. Even with bodybuilding, like I learned a great deal about that as a young person, going to my hometown public library, and just they had a huge selection of books. I just read them all.
So when you were in school, that was your big thing, academics, basically?
Pretty much. I wouldn't say I was an academic superstar, not a genius by far, but I definitely had I loved to read and write.
What subjects were you most interested in?
Science, history, and English literature. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that obviously literature came later in life, but that kind of the evolution thereof. Yeah.
And leaving sports alone, so you were a small kid.
I was what I would call skinny fat back in the old days. Yeah. So like, you know, not round fat.
Okay, I got you.
But you know, kind of little jiggly around, not so big limbs. You know, nothing to be proud of. Kind of that limbo land in the middle. You know, just enough to be greatly dissatisfied with myself.
Was your brother the same way?
My brother was the same way, but a little bit more naturally athletic. My brother didn't have asthma, so he played soccer a lot at a young age and really got into that a lot before injuries took him out of that. But and he was naturally stronger than me, I think. But he didn't pursue the gym like I did. Maybe because he could pursue soccer and I couldn't. So,
so what did you do when you got into junior high school? That's when they start trying to bring you out more and you get into drama or whatever. So what happened in junior high?
In junior high, for activities, I think you mentioned, I did do a little bit of drama class. Tried that out. That was fun, but I didn't feel I was good enough at it to keep going at it. I did do 1 year of soccer in junior high, and because I couldn't breathe much because of the asthma thing, I was a fullback, so mostly in the back field, and my coach basically told me to slide tackle the other team's players and take them out of the game, get a red card, and sit in the sideline, which I didn't like doing, but that was my instruction. It's because I couldn't run around very much. So I only did 1 year of that, and yeah, I didn't do really much any sports in high school or junior high school. That was kind of not a thing that I was able to push myself at, to excel at. So
how'd that make you? I mean, how'd you? So you were a nurse. I'm trying to get the side of you, man.
Yeah. Don't want to make it too easy.
So you're in high school. You're kind of a recluse.
Yeah, a bit.
Because you're worried about sports. You know you can't be.
You can't join in those team activities. You know, yeah.
So what did you do socially? Did you have friends? Or did you?
Oh yeah. I definitely had friends. I was one of those kind of kids who had friends in every group, somewhat. Like I wasn't really focused on one clique. I had my at the time it was, you know, the mid '80s, junior high school time. I had my metalhead friends. We went to see Metallica together. I had a couple of jock friends. I had some nerdy intellectual friends. I had a good selection of everybody. Probably the metalhead group was the group I was most closely connected to. But there were a lot of really smart, super smart kids in there who have kind of gone on to be leaders in the technology field these days.
Why were you more attracted to that area?
I think they were just more open to everybody.
They welcomed
more
you a little bit
accessible.
more.
Yeah, more accessible, less judgmental. Yeah, maybe because they'd all been judged enough themselves, so, you know.
Because they dressed, did you ever try to dress the same way?
I didn't in high school too much. That was just kind of jeans and t-shirts era. I didn't do the long hair thing really much. Right. After high school, I was going down a different track. After high school, I got out of metal and went into the hardcore, straight edge punk rock scene, which is very big in Boston, which we can talk about if you want.
So did you do the hair? Did you do your hair? You had to, come on, you have to associate some kind of way.
Well, after I got out of high school, I did dye my hair blue-black and wore a black leather jacket and black jeans and black engineer boots for a while. And I looked very much like a lead singer of a certain band, and people would mistake me for that, and that somehow gave me a bit of a thrill.
Have you started lifting yet?
I just started, yeah.
Just started.
I mean, I had first picked up the weights around 15. And that was because I was skinny fat and unhappy with that. And my dad had been quite active in football when he was young, and even though he had left, there was a good amount of weights in the basement in the house that he left behind that I kind of picked up and started playing with. So I did get some activity, and there's some momentum building there, 15, 16. Got Arnold's books, the books from the library, read, learned, tried, on my own. There was no internet back then.
And you had no buddy? Did you have any buddies you did this with?
Not yet. Not until I started progressing, and then people would come to me and then want to become training friends.
Okay, when was it the time you looked in the mirror and you said, "All right, now
starting to show a difference"?
Yeah, starting to show a difference.
Yeah, probably around 16 to 17. Yeah, it started to become
a little definition,
kind of obvious.
Biceps, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's funny because I was always kind of a mild kid. Still am pretty mild tempered. I did get teased a bit. I was skinny fat and not in team activities. So about that time where I started showing some muscle size, like the kids who teased me started getting worried, oh, Matt's gonna want revenge or something like that. And totally I didn't. That's just not my thing.
Would they pick on
At
you
all.
sometimes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. They
They push you around and stuff in front of people and stuff? And that kind of thing?
I got that when I was younger.
And you didn't retaliate? You didn't have that side to you?
I didn't want to be that kind of person. At a very young age, I just decided I didn't want to be that kind of person.
Would turn that switch off, that aggression?
Yeah.
Because I think that's something that comes out in all. I was picked on too as a kid.
Yeah. I'm really naturally not aggressive.
Okay.
A good friend of mine here at the club, Tom Shinneman, jokes that if I was any more, mild, I'd probably be dead. I don't get ticked off. It's really hard to upset me.
So with your brother, what's your brother like?
My brother is probably a little more emotional than I am, but very, very empathetic. Very, very mild-tempered. He had wanted to be a nurse when he was younger. It didn't work out and ended up going into, at the time, like CAD/CAM type engineering. He does like lighting systems for big buildings and stuff like that. So, but he's got a very, very soft personality, maybe more than me, but maybe a little bit more emotionally expressive than me, a little more hot-tempered than me, which is not hard to do.
Was your mother that way as well? Do you remember that from her?
My mom was always trying to be logical, I felt. When I was a teenager, she'd already gotten to senior management in the bank and had large teams and had that kind of management mindset in the house too, about doing things the right way. And, she'd ask you to do something, say thank you before you did it. And I just kind of learned from her that maybe that kind of steady nature that she showed. And I think I'm probably even more reserved than my mother. I think I'm far more reserved than either my mother or my father. Just somewhere, something about me is different.
Have you ever learned any type of martial arts or self-defense?
No, I was interested when I was young, but I think my mom wasn't keen on me doing that. Didn't really push negative, but I wasn't pushing too hard to go into it either. So I didn't do that. I think maybe bodybuilding filled that place where I just felt more comfortable with my body, even though I wasn't doing anything physically against or with the world. As I got larger, as I mentioned, like in junior high school, people started to keep their distance and stop teasing me and stuff. And I didn't do it because of that, just because kind of a natural outcome of that. So.
Well, you weren't unpleased.
I wasn't unpleased. No, it was a favorable outcome.
Yeah, okay, I get a little bit more here. Okay,
yeah, but I was never. Even when I got quite good at bodybuilding, and I got some titles and stuff and recognition. I was never the kind of guy. It was incredibly embarrassing for me to walk around outside with a tank top or something like that. I can't do that. Just don't want. I don't want to do that.
You don't need that kind of stuff. You wait till your 2 minutes of fame or 1 minute.
Yeah,
or whatever
and even competing again on stage is not my favorite thing. It's more like just to. It's the completion of a journey. Okay, I put that kind of pin in it. I've done that. I've accomplished something. I hit a goal. Then I go back behind the scenes again. That's more where I'm at. So.
That is really interesting because you're the first bodybuilder I've met that didn't have that side of aggression or didn't do anything to learn how to defend themselves.
No, I'm.
Everyone I know that just built their body up knows how to defend themselves.
I mean, I know how to survive, I guess.
Okay.
I had, as I mentioned briefly earlier, like after I went through the metalhead phase in high school, I went into the straight edge hardcore scene in Boston. Boston, if anybody doesn't know what straight edge hardcore is the kind of music. It was very fast, very hard. It was common in Boston, LA, and Washington, D.C. at the time, 1980s. And straight edge was a movement where it was like no drinking, no drugs, no anything that messes with the mind or keeps you off course. And that appealed to me because I've never drank. I don't drink. I don't never use any kind of psychoactive drugs or anything like that. And I would go to those concerts, and what we did do is, we had the pit, and we would dance hard. And you get hit in the face, and and there wasn't a problem for me. Like I didn't snap and retaliate.
Right.
I could handle the pain and stuff like that. I could get through it and rise to the top, and people would stay away from me just naturally.
But you'd swing your arms around, you'd do everything, yeah. I've seen it.
It was,
and guys come out with bloody noses and everything, and lips and black eyes.
Especially back in those days. It's different than these days.
But didn't that start in London? I don't know if it was called straight edge, but I remember they were running. It looked the same, but maybe they were on something.
It was similar, I think. London certainly, the whole Sex Pistols thing,
right.
And then The Exploited and all those other bands out of the UK But Boston had a certain pride that we had this very, very hard style.
And it was hard.
It was hard, yeah. It was kind of, we used to joke that when a certain band from Boston played called Slapshot, there's always an ambulance outside the club waiting.
Because people would
on
lose
Mass
teeth
Ave.
and everything, yeah.
Yeah. But it was like, someone fell down, you pick them up. Someone wants to get out, you get them out.
It's only men.
Those girls would show up, but they wouldn't go in the pit.
They would shoot. Unless they had a death wish. If they had a death wish.
I knew a couple of tough girls, but yeah, none of them
wouldn't jump in
there.
there.
No. But I mean, I learned there that, I didn't learn self-defense,
So you're keeping my point the same. I have never met anyone that big, so you did learn how to handle yourself.
I did, but it wasn't to learn to handle myself. It was an activity that kind of by proxy, I guess.
Exactly. It's like being in, what did they call it now? The MA?
Yeah.
So you do the same thing. It's the same
to
thing.
music.
No gloves, nothing. You're just in there hitting whatever, swinging around. If you don't look right, you get hit.
Yeah.
If you don't,
it was all good fun.
You're done.
It was all good fun. So that's my only combat.
What's the worst injury? That's real combat. I mean, that's like playing rugby to me.
When
I watched rugby,
yeah.
When I first time,
full contact.
Some of my partners were really into rugby, so when they came here, they said, let's go to Hong Kong, because that's the only place they were really playing real rugby.
Right.
And you just got on teams, and they were waiting for it to become a real sport where people got paid, and it wasn't yet. It was nuts. I mean, I watched them run up and down the field and doing stuff, and hugging each other afterwards.
No big helmets.
Nothing.
No.
And running around, grabbing people where you don't want to be grabbed and just holding them down, and I'm going, my goodness.
Yeah, that's a hard sport.
So when you did that, what's the worst injury you got from being straight edge?
My worst injury is somewhat ironic. I was in Boston one night after the Red Sox lost a game, which is always a bad time. And I got jumped by a bunch of kids and got my nose broken pretty bad. And ended up like this.
What do you mean you jumped? That's the worst injury. You mean?
No, it's coming. So
okay,
I got jumped.
Okay.
My nose was broken, and I was gonna have to go to a plastic surgeon and get it fixed and recentered and everything because completely the cartilage off the bone. Then I went to go see a concert a few days later at a club in Boston. I believe it was GBH, Grievous Bodily Harm from the UK. And one of my friends, who's now a priest, a pastor, he was very hard in the scene at the time. He was in front of me in the pit and drawed off to punch somebody and caught me in the nose with his elbow. Broke my nose, and it was dead centered. And I went to the bathroom and took a mirror. It was perfectly fixed. That was my worst injury, but it was a good one.
So you never had to have it done? You
never had to get. So I told him, I said, you fixed my nose. He's like, send the check in the mail, buddy. Check in the mail. Like joking that I was paying him for the doctor's work.
That's some hardcore stuff. Because just first of all, to have the nerve to be able to get in a situation like that, and that's what people, even that take martial arts and stuff, never really get into.
Yeah, I suppose
they're supposed to be pulling back, but in that. You're not pulling back.
No, you're not pulling back.
You're going around, you're swinging, you're doing what you have to do.
Of course, the elbow in the face was completely accidental.
But the guy who was going to hit wouldn't have been.
No, that was intentional. The other side, the other side was intentional.
And it could have come your way too, but you have to know how to duck, get out the way, and you guys had a code of honor there.
Absolutely, yeah, very strict code of honor.
Don't get mad. Don't go crazy.
Yep.
We do this.
Help people.
We help them up if you need to. If the guys, if you've hit them hard, be compassionate. All that stuff was good.
Yeah.
But most people don't ever get to that.
No, they don't.
Most people have never been hit.
No, never been hit, and they don't know how to act when they get hit.
They're black belts. So you've never been hit yet. Wait till you get hit. Then you'll see how you feel.
Yeah.
When
so
you
I guess
feel
I learned.
Ringing.
Yeah, I don't lose it when I get hit, which is good.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you know how you respond in mayhem. You already know.
True.
Most people never know that.
That's true. Yeah.
So you shouldn't stop living. You're real passive. I've done nothing. I've just been in big, real.
Yeah.
You seen those saloon fights in movies, in the cowboy movies? What we done way past that.
We just had loud music. Like
the stuff we were using wasn't styrofoam. We were using real bones and skin. My goodness.
It was nonviolent violence. Yes. Yeah.
How long did you do that?
I did that. I was probably into that scene for about 3 or 4 years through my early university time. Yeah, it was a good time. I had some really good friends.
Rush. You had a real good rush from that too.
Well, I enjoyed going to the city of Boston to see the bands. It was 3 bands for $5, and see all my friends would show up, and we'd go enjoy. And it was a very close setting, so you kind of mix with the bands sometimes, which was a bit of a thrill as a young kid. And it was just a good time.
Wouldn't guys want to come to you because they see you're built now and they see you're getting built? So wouldn't they want to try to come at you?
No, fortunately they didn't. It did end up with some jokes though. I remember once I saw a show and I was dancing in the pit, And one of the guys on stage, lead singer, he's in between songs, he's like, dude, looking at me, he's like, supposed to be 2 pits, one for regular people, one for people like you. Like, called me out. Everybody's like laughing and clapping and stuff. So that was fun. Lead singer of the band.
How old were you then?
I was probably 17 at the
17.
time. Yeah, it was just kind of the tail end of, you know, that era for me. Yeah, it's good times. Yeah.
So you finish high school.
Yes. Yeah.
You go into college. What were you focused on?
So going into high school, I mean, again, out of high school and going into college, I was focused on what my coursework was going to be, which was sports medicine. I wanted to take my love of my education, self-education of bodybuilding, and turn it into a career. So it's sports medicine with the idea of maybe becoming like a strength coach for a professional team. Somewhere I thought that would be a good deployment of my skills and learn some more about that. So I really focused on that. So I looked at schools that had those kind of courses.
Did you know anybody who was doing that?
No, I didn't.
So what made you decide to go in that area? Who brought you into that? Because you probably didn't even know about it.
It was just myself. I mean, no, I didn't know about it because I was reading so much literature already at the time.
I forgot that university. Part of being a nerd, yeah.
Right, yeah, super nerd. So, you know, how can I turn my nerdiness and my bodybuilding into a career? You know, where's the synergy? You know? So, yeah, so I went to university for that. I kind of focused on that. And at that time also, I kind of got away from that music scene and got more into serious about, because my university was a commuting school, there's no dormitories. So I would drive there every day. And in between my home and the university was a real hardcore bodybuilding gym. So I started going there. So by the time I targeted school and my education, I started going to the real gym, and the people in the gym who had experience started kind of pointing me out, why don't you compete? Why don't you compete? And I'm like, what? Compete? What? Huh? You know, and then, you know, those kind of things converged around that same time, about 18 years old. So I was focused on my academics, my studies, to try to make a career out of the things that I enjoyed, but also the bodybuilding kind of took a more serious track at the same time.
Right. What'd your mother and your brother say about you as they saw you starting to change, and your father?
My father was proud. My mother was concerned.
What was she worried about?
Oh, she was just worried about the fact that, oh, you're gonna, you know, she thought that it wasn't healthy to be so heavy or whatever, or you look too blocky or whatever. Different aesthetic, I think, in mind, you know. Especially when my legs started getting really big, when that became important when I was 19 years old. She's like, oh, you look shorter. I'm like, I'm already short, Mom. Don't worry about it. You know? But my dad, of course, you know, he thought it was cool, something more to talk about. My brother would show up at the gym every once in a while, influenced by me, but it wasn't really his thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but I was just, like, again, it was like kind of pre-internet days. Communication was a little more limited than it is now. So whoever you were physically present with, like in the gym or at school, was the people that you kind of, you know, collected and shared those kind of experiences with. But yeah, my family was there for me, but bodybuilding was still kind of weird back then, like late 1980s. You know, it wasn't a thing.
It was a mainstream, as it is now.
Yeah, it's more mainstream now.
Oh man.
Yeah, because it's widened as a spectrum a lot more.
It sure has.
You know, it's not just hardcore bodybuilding now. There's the smaller divisions and more aesthetic divisions, which is a good thing, I think. Yeah.
You're making me feel. Remember how I felt about with artistic gymnastics, and you probably have this. I was a gymnast, so you have your hardcore gymnasts that can actually do the things and aren't afraid to do the stunts and work with the skills,
right? Which
takes a lot of nerve to be able to do, right? Not just physical strength, but mental strength.
Yeah.
Then you have artistic gymnastics, where it's just for women. And they have the ribbons and the balls and stuff, and they stay on the ground. There's nothing they do that takes any real challenge. They're just really, at that time, I looked at it like, these are the people that can't be gymnasts, but they're giving them something else to do and still call it gymnastics. So that's how you probably feel about the guys that really won't get into it, just want to have kind of a physique. You know what I mean? But don't go all the way.
I can share some of that, but at the same time, I can respect the fact that not everybody wants to be 300 pounds.
That's true.
You know,
that's muscle
fair.
is really dense. Yeah. I had a bodybuilding friend of mine who I had one of my first podcasts, and Jeff Liebengood.
That name sounds familiar.
Oh yeah, now he's up in Sendai and he works with a baseball.
Okay.
Yeah. So when Jeff was setting up his schools, his programs here, and he had a good investor behind him, I went into his office once and he had a big orange, yellow-looking thing about this big, and he had a reddish thing about this big. And he said, Lance, you know what this is? And I said, that's supposed to be fat? He said, yeah. And that's muscle.
Yeah.
And he said, you notice how much smaller this is than the fat?
Yeah.
This is exactly, he said, this is 5 pounds of fat, this is 5 pounds of muscle. It's more condensed. So he showed me.
Yeah, the density
things.
is different.
You're right,
Yeah.
right, completely.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference in the world. And he's built similar to you as well. Jeff Liebengood.
Yeah.
Really interesting, his story. He was Air Force as well. He was ex-Air Force. Have you ever taken anything to enhance your body?
Well, back in the 1980s, you kind of had to compete. And it was not it was before things became kind of off limits. You know, it's just kind of there, you know, and it wasn't, I know these days it's kind of pushed to extremes, which is very different than it was in my days. In my days when I was young, we had very strong camaraderie in the gym. So it was really about the training. Right. We loved to train, and we loved to share our training with each other. That was like everything. Then more food came in later and stuff, and then other things kind of came in, became more of a increasing importance later on. But I mean, it's just, you know, I say this like, I can lie about things and be a dishonest person, or I can say things and then, you know, hopefully people will research a little bit and understand, and then they can make their own judgments.
That's true.
As opposed to me just being a liar.
Well,
so that's where I kind of stand on these things.
I could use the analogy of tobacco versus hemp or marijuana. Okay?
Yeah.
It hasn't been shown to do as much damage as the other.
Yeah, true.
Why is it that the government says okay to this one and no to this one? And this one, actually, if you use hemp, it's better for clothing. It's better. You wouldn't have to cut down trees. You could use it as paper. You can do so much stuff with it. Tobacco,
adequate protein source too.
You know what I mean? It's shown to be much more, but the reason why is because the people that did the tobacco make so much money.
Oh yeah.
And have so many people in the lobby. They've villainized
tax revenue.
Right. They've made a villain out of hemp.
Yes. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
the same thing with additives that you use to your body.
Yeah. True.
Certain people make that the villain when it isn't, if you know how to use it.
Yes, absolutely.
Too much water will drown you.
Yes, absolutely.
Am I right?
Too much hydrogen monoxide will kill you.
Will kill you. So what are you talking about? Too much oxygen will kill you.
Yes, absolutely.
So people, you have to do it in moderation and know what you're doing when you do it. Yeah. There's another guy I saw, and he was the size I wanted to be, and I asked him, and he told me what he did. He used things to enhance himself. Because he looked good, and I can tell, basically, when people do that, you do have the few people, which are in the minority, that can do it naturally. But they're in the minority. Extent. Yeah. They're in the minority. Yeah. No, they have people like that. I've seen some in Africa. They're not taking a thing.
Oh, yeah, genetics.
But they, bingo. I mean, you wish you had their genetics.
Yes,
these people, and it's unreal.
Yeah.
And they don't need anything to enhance.
Yeah, no, genetics is the end-all and be-all. People hate to admit it because that limits you.
Does.
What, you know,
what you
guys
can
are
do.
Good enough. Oh, game over, right? No one wants to hear that, you know what I mean? But it's true.
It's a fact.
It's true.
But that's the same for all the sports, too.
Absolutely.
There's a certain body style for everything we do.
Yes.
Gymnasts. If you have longer arms and bigger hands, you're going to do better than the guy that has little short arms.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to be the same.
Right. There's a reason why even in 2024, I still remember Spud Wilson in basketball. There's only one Spud Wilson.
That's right. And there always will be. There's very few.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that interesting?
It is. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's you have to accept that.
You do.
You know, you can work around it if you love what you do, but there are certain limitations you have to acknowledge.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think one thing, I'm really giving a lot of talks now about how if you learn to like that person you see in the mirror, you'll never have another enemy.
Yeah.
Because that's the person that you're going to say the worst things to, treat the worst, and have negative stuff going on in the back of your head all the time whenever that person does anything. You've got to learn to forgive that person, learn to love that person, and then you can give that to other people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it doesn't become real until you've learned to love that guy. Because you're expecting if you go into a relationship where you're expecting other people to be the person that loves you, why should they? You haven't learned to do it yet.
Yeah. Everything in life you view through a lens that you've created yourself, right? So if your lens is full of criticism and everything, then everything you see will be in that same lens.
So true.
Yeah.
So you finished in college. You decided what you're going to do. You're going to become a fitness coach. Not a fitness coach. You're going to be a what?
I wanted to be a sports trainer.
Sports trainer, right.
Yeah, for a high level, science-minded sports trainer. But unfortunately, I went to the University of Massachusetts, which was a state school, and it was the late 1980s, 1990s, early 90s, and state schools get their funding from the state. And funding was being cut. So I was a sophomore in the sports medicine program, had taken advanced level classes and was told the course was being eliminated for everybody not already a senior.
Where were you, a junior? At the
I was a sophomore.
Sophomore.
So freshman, sophomore, I had taken junior level courses already. I had taken some. I was going right after the concentration course, not the core courses.
Okay.
So I was taking all that stuff up front
But you had to, right?
because I wanted to,
right.
and then I found out I got rug pulled basically. So I wasn't able to continue with sports medicine, unfortunately, which kind of threw me for a loop because my family didn't have a lot of money. I'm single mom and stuff like that. I didn't have the resources, maybe endurance-wise, to work full-time to fund my own college. So I had to make some choices, and I had to switch majors at that time to my second love, which was English literature, writing. So I had all that behind me and carried my sports medicine stuff with me. So the things were changing in front of me in my path. What am I going to do now? So maybe I'll be a writer, because I did write. And at the time, I think I mentioned in my talk, like after one of my first big contests, I got a phone call from this guy out in ESPN who would scout bodybuilders. And he scouted me, and I sent some pictures and stuff. We had many phone calls. And after talking to him for a while, he's like, oh, you're a smart guy. You can write, because I had to send him some stuff. Why don't you write for me instead of doing this body? Trust me, there's no money in bodybuilding. Like 1% make a living on it, especially back then. There was no social media and product endorsements that didn't exist. So it kind of naturally, again, things naturally went that way, like into writing. So I went into the literature writing, creative writing courses and stuff like that, and was writing for ESPN, wrote a few episodes, interviewed bodybuilders on the phone, wrote them scripts and stuff like that to do on the show. So this kind of, again, natural migration into a new career path happened around that time. So no more sports strength coaching for a professional team, but kind of staying in the field, being able to do what I enjoy, but in a different way. Right. Yeah.
So you're able to still gather the information, keep up to date as to what's the new stuff coming out?
Yeah.
Because you're writing about it.
And I was still raiding the library, going through everything from, back then it was microfiche.
That's
to read
right.
journals and microfiche.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And going through that.
this thing on the screen. Yeah, those days. Yeah, so I still love to accumulate knowledge. And I was kind of trying to pour it into being a better bodybuilder, being more knowledgeable, while I was also continuing down the writing track and writing for TV once in a while. And maybe, I'll get into writing actual fiction someday, which I wanted to do, but it hasn't worked out yet.
How long did you keep that? You started that as a sophomore?
Yeah. I switched majors sophomore, so I switched to English literature and East Asian studies minor.
And you got the job when you became while you were a sophomore, or when you?
Yeah. He offered me he actually wanted me to move to California later on, but I didn't. Yeah.
So you finished your last 2 years, and you were employed by him while you were doing this.
I wrote for him for a couple of years. And then I think the show kind of faded off, actually, and so we stopped doing that work. But we stayed in touch.
But were you working with him when you graduated?
I think I was still working with him towards my graduation. And actually, after I graduated, several years later, so I graduated in '94, and I moved to Japan first time late '95, '96. I did my first bodybuilding show in 1997. We spoke through email, and he called me, because I found out I was doing a contest in Japan, and there was another pro bodybuilder coming. He wanted us to connect and stuff like that. So I still had this relationship with him, the producer over at that show. And I don't know what he's doing now, but I could probably look him up. Yeah.
So Matt, so when you so you're working with him at that time. You finished with what kind of degree did you get?
I was an English major with an East Asian studies minor.
What made you decide to go into East Asian studies?
This is one of those kind of corny things, right? So I was a child of the 70s, born in '69, grew up on a steady TV diet Sundays of Creature Double Feature, which was a lot of Godzilla, Gamera movies, stuff like that. And of course, every kid loves giant monsters, right? But there's always something like weirdly attractive to me about the world they were living in. Like especially, I don't know if people remember, if you watch Gamera movies from the 1970s, it's all about the kids. There's a children's thing, children's focus. Gamera was a friend of children. So all these little Japanese kids are running around in old Tokyo or whatever. And something about it kind of was appealing. I don't know what. I still can't put my finger on it. But it's kind of I don't know. Something kind of piqued my interest there in the background, not just the foreground. And so when I grew up and got into more stuff, and of course, animation was on TV back then, the old stuff. And I went to university and had to pick a language. I wanted something challenging, so I was going to pick either German or Japanese. So I decided on Japanese, and I got into Japanese, and I just fell in love with it. Basically, I'm still not a great Japanese speaker, but my professor was an awesome guy and kind of took me under his wing. And I got involved in the Japanese club at UMass Boston, and we went out and did activities all the time. And I really got deeper and deeper into that. And he wanted me to kind of take that, into the future. And obviously I did, but that's when it kind of happened.
Was he Japanese?
Yeah, he was Japanese, yep. He had moved to the States a long time ago. He was a professor at UMass Boston and at Harvard. He used to like to talk about, he was Masako-sama's boss. So she was going to Harvard, and she was a teaching assistant for him in her Harvard days. So yeah, way back when. Yeah. So so I kind of went that way naturally. So that's the kind of East Asian studies came from that. So the Japanese language, history, literature, and also Chinese history, literature, and also religion of all of Asia too. It was my minor. I found that just really interesting. So a lot of material to go into.
So you made your first trip.
I made my first trip right after university. We had a teaching assistant in my school at the time who helped my professor, and a good friend of mine. The teaching assistant friend lived in Sapporo in Hokkaido and wanted to start his own English school. And he's like, "You guys come help me, So we're like, okay, why not? Out of school, just let's go do something interesting. So I went to Hokkaido, and things kind of fell apart.
So it never happened.
It went kind of sideways. Like the apartment, it's a sketchy story, but the apartment he found us was kind of some sketchy guys building, kind of,
Where in Hokkaido
kind of
were you? Hakodate?
No, we were in Sapporo. We were right in Sapporo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Hakodate, there's a lot of, anyway.
Yeah.
Guys that have shorter fingers than they need to.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy who, he's like, oh, he came into our apartment a couple of times. He's like, your apartment used to be my laundry room. We're like, really? That's speaking kind of broken English. I love America kind of guy. Okay, come to my club. Yeah, okay.
How long did you stay the first time?
We were there for about a month and a half. We figured we couldn't make it work, and just running low on funds. So we bailed out, went back to the States, and I went back and worked at Statestreet Bank again. I had worked on and off there many years because of my mother's involvement.
Oh, your mother's there.
My mother was there, so my summer jobs were there a lot of times, working as a clerk, and then I went back to work at the FX desk back then in 1994. 4 and 5.
What'd you do at the FX6?
I would reconcile trades.
Okay.
So which was real bare because I wasn't good with numbers. I had the sheets of lira and peso or whatever, and had to call the Boston trading desk and verify numbers. And it always terrified me that I was off a little bit. It can make a big difference.
Of course it would.
Yeah. So that was very scary for me. Didn't enjoy that.
Okay. So then, what made you decide to come back the second time? And when was it? A year later?
It was about a couple of years later after that. So yeah. So before I left for Japan the first time, I was at a party in Boston, some Japanese friends of mine, and I met a girl, and we clicked a lot, but I was going to Japan.
That was, wait, shut the mouth.
Yeah.
Now start again.
Yeah.
Let me get in my head right. You said before you went the first time?
Before I went the first time.
The first time, right.
Right before I went, like probably a couple months.
Okay.
Went to a party at a friend of mine's house. It was all Japanese kids and a few non-Japanese.
All right.
And I met a girl, and we really clicked, but I was leaving I already had plans to go to Japan.
And she was Japanese?
And she was Japanese, yeah. And she was studying in Boston. There's so many Japanese students studying in Boston at the time, various universities. And we really hit it off, but I was like, I'm going to Japan, so see you later kind of thing. But I came back and started working at Statestreet Bank, as I mentioned, and we reconnected accidentally, very accidentally. I think I was at a pizza place with other Japanese friend and some other friends of mine. And she walked in, and she was going to give her phone number to the girl, and she couldn't find a piece of paper, so I said, use my napkin, and then she gave it to me. And my friend's like, you idiot, that means for you, not for me. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. So I got this girl's number I was talking to before I left for Japan the first time. And long story short, we ended up getting married a couple of years later. And that was my first Japanese marriage, which lasted about 14 years. And
it was 14 years?
Yeah. And we came, she was involved in the TV industry a little bit. So she had plans to definitely come back to Japan. She was only in the States to build up her English and stuff like that. So I committed, okay, we'll go back with you, of course, So went back and then worked on that. And I ended up working at the Yugaku place that, kind of the study abroad school.
Where were you?
In Tokyo.
Okay.
Yeah. I was actually living in Kamakura at the time, originally. That's where our family was. And I came into Tokyo, and then we got a place closer. And I worked in Tokyo all those years. Yeah. So yeah, that was my first Japanese family, I guess.
Right. But you guys didn't have kids?
No, not yet. Not until we moved back to the States after being here for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved back to the States in 1998.
And you had kids then?
Then I had kids after that. I had my daughter after moving back to the States for a while. Not until later, actually, because I wasn't, I'm never against kids, but I wasn't like burning to have children. But I was starting to get to that point in my life, both of us, where it's like, if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? You know? So I have a wonderful 18-year-old daughter right now who lives here, just absolutely.
She's living where, here in Japan?
She lives in Japan, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Her mother they live down in Kanagawa. I live in western Tokyo. But yeah, so it was well worth it. Beautiful 18-year-old girl.
Does she speak English?
Speaks both. Bilingual,
both.
perfectly. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, she spent 2 years in the States as a baby. So I think there's some, I've read and heard that the first couple years where the ears pick up sounds is really where it makes a big difference in what sounds you can replicate. So if you can't hear it, you can't say it, right? So she was immersed in that English environment for 2 years so she could reproduce all the sounds she heard. And then coming here, I put her in international kindergarten for 5 years. And she loves, Disney Channel, all that stuff the kids liked back then. So she kept saturating herself with that. And then went to regular Japanese school. So she's fully bilingual.
Can be Japanese young.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if they don't go to elementary school here, they can't say they're really Japanese. Because that's where they're taught to be Japanese.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She went to slightly unconventional school, fortunately, so she wasn't hammered. But she did learn to be Japanese.
Learned the Japanese, right.
Yeah.
Unconventional is they just, but then again, that could be really conventional because private schools are not conventional.
True, true.
And did she keep the teachers? What I like about the private schools here, like if you go to Care or whatever for the Japanese school, it's probably one of the best ways of teaching kids. The teacher stays with you from kindergarten to 6th grade.
Oh, right.
The same teacher, so they get to know you. It's like having a surrogate parent.
Right.
They get to know the child, and there's no, judgment. They just know what you're like.
They see the child develop right in front of them.
And they teach you the way you need to be taught.
Right, right. Yeah.
Which makes a big difference. It's not by writ like you do in other schools. You get a different teacher that might not like being a teacher.
Right.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
So someone that does that might have 3 or 4, classes in his lifetime. Because they take them all the way through. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah.
That's really, really good.
I didn't have that as a kid, but
none of us did. Very few of us did. Unless, because homeschooling wasn't a thing then. Unless you lived out in the middle where you had no choice.
No choice.
In Australia, you're out in the middle of out back, and you had no choice. You had to, hey, okay, in the middle.
But to be fair, I was fond of most of my elementary school teachers. Most of my teachers were really nice. Yeah.
I had the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, because I had anyway, it just didn't. It didn't. School was not something I took to because I could see. I thought I could see through a lot of that, and I thought that. What are they trying to teach us? Because they weren't. How are you going to use what we're being taught?
I think most of us felt that, right?
Especially why are you telling me I have to remember all these things? I want to be able to function when I get out of this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't happening that way.
Yeah.
So I think the military ended up being something really good, even though I didn't want to go in the service because it was Vietnam time. So I was drafted.
Oh.
My first year in college, I got drafted. So I enlisted. And in order to get into the Air Force, you have to test. And they had a line around that recruiting office. So I went in to take the test. It's a 2-hour test. And 2 of us passed. 2? And I got into the Air Force, yeah.
Wow.
2 of us out of the 25 that I went in with anyway.
Yeah.
2 of us got in.
That's a high threshold.
Yeah. So you came to Japan.
Yep.
The first, and you got married.
Got married.
Tried it out.
Came to Japan.
Came to Japan. Then you went back to the States for a while.
Went back to the States. Yeah, I actually had a friend. I had started working a little bit in technology before I left the States. I was working... Back then, we had the kind of small mom and pop shops that built and sold computers before the big guys took over. And a friend of mine owned one of those places. Another friend of mine worked there, and he said, "Come work with me." So so we just had a lot of fun building computers before I left for Japan. But then when
was that in Boston or California?
It was in the Boston area.
Okay, Boston area.
Yeah, it was Boston. I was always in the Boston area.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I moved to Japan, and then we stayed in touch. Of course, we were best friends. And then he told me, like, I can get a job for both of you in this new company I'm at. That was like the mid-'90s, so things were getting kind of good, And I turned to my wife at the time, and she was kind of not really satisfied with how things were working out here. And so she saw it as an opportunity, so we both went back after being here for about 3 years. And then stayed in the States working at the company for about 10 years, almost 10 years, both of us, side by side. And towards the end of that, we had our child. And my daughter, she had some health issues with food allergies and things like that, which was a bit of a burden and a bit of a scare with America's medical care systems. She had been in the ICU, intensive care in Boston's hospitals for about 2 weeks at a time because of various scares.
From what age? From what age?
That was before she was 2. She was like 1.5,
goodness.
you know, stuff like that. And they're trying to figure out why she's having such strong reactions and stuff. And it was very scary and potentially very expensive and very stressful for my first wife. So she wanted to come back to Japan where she could support from her family. And I wasn't going to argue with that. So I'm still not sure how. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here. Still not sure how, but I think I gave my CV to somebody online once who just said, you know, give me your CV, you know, and I'll see what I can do for you. And I completely forgot about it. And then at some point, recruiters from Japan ended up calling my house. Way later, I completely forgot about that and started offering me jobs. And I was like, okay, you know. And I actually got an interview and ended up working at Fidelity over here. So we moved back to Japan. That was very unexpected, but opportune. And I've been here since then. So that's kind of, we bounced back and forth a couple times. Right. Just kind of went where the flow seemed to take us, you know. And never really, you know, both obviously American and Japanese, we could live in either country. And both of us saw good sides of both countries. So it was no resistance to just the flow where it was going to take us. Mm-hmm. So we went back to Japan after living in the States for 10 years.
And you separated here?
Separated here, yep.
How old was your daughter when you separated?
She was just after 2, you know.
How long have you been married this time?
So coming up on 14 years this year, yeah. I got married in 2011.
28
right after.
Years total? You've been...
Yeah. A very short break in the middle. I'm kind of a married type guy.
Yeah, you want to have somebody with you. Yeah, you don't need to be home.
I'm not a dater. I don't run around. I'm just not interested in that.
Yeah.
So I find someone who I find is really someone, and I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. And if it's worth committing, then I commit. Otherwise, I don't flit around and have fun. That's not my thing.
Yeah. That's not having fun.
Not to me, it isn't.
That's what I'm saying. That's not having fun.
No.
I call it temporary pleasure but permanent pain.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Because what do you have at the end of all that?
You've done a couple of books, and you told me you've done some books, but they're all digital.
Yes, yeah.
But give me some of the titles.
Yes, I did. My first book was the Foundations of Hypertrophy, which is the basics of how to grow muscle tissue. And I want to make it really basic and really simple and really straightforward because I felt that, especially nowadays with social media and everything it influences, they're selling all these kind of special techniques and whatever, and you have to pay me for my special course. And I was like, no. Like growing muscle, hypertrophy, is really, really simple, but it's not easy. So I try to kind of write that down in a way that people could incorporate it and understand from it. Like there's certain things you can do to save yourself some time. It's not magic and stuff. You got to work hard, but there's the right way to do it and try to package that and deliver it in a book. And then my second book was about nutrition. So I call it physique nutrition. So based on, feeding yourself nutrition to grow muscle and lose fat, or basically both at the same time, if possible. And I did them both digital because I'm probably biased. I have a lot of books, but they're all digital. I don't have paper. I mean, here in Tokyo, space is at a premium, right? So I don't have a lot of paper books everywhere. And more people like deliver a format in Kindle format or whatever. So yeah, these are both up on Amazon under my name. And it was fun to write them because I just want to kind of pass on the knowledge, share the knowledge in the most easily consumable manner that's possible, I think. And what better way than a kind of digital book you can download?
I'm sure you have many more in you too that you're going to be bringing out.
Possibly, yeah. I still got more to say, more to share. So maybe newer versions thereof too, because as we said at the beginning, there's always something new coming out, and I want to incorporate that. And,
that's right. You have to keep it up to date.
Yeah, I don't want to say like this is it and I know everything, because I don't. So yeah.
Matt, before I end the podcast, there's a question I always like to ask the people who come on. If you could magically go back in time and meet the younger Matt, with all the knowledge you have now, what advice would you give him, and how old would he be?
That's an interesting question. What would I want to advise them, and how old would he be? I don't know if I would change anything, but I might just kind of give words of encouragement that challenging things will happen, tough times will come, but you will get through them as long as you stay true to your values, to your core, what's important to you, do the right thing. And I did that, but if I had known that ahead of time that was going to work out, I would have been a lot more comfortable through those challenging times.
Thank you, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Great
much.
talking to you.
I want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast. And never forget, it's all unknown, so continue to reach for the stars.
Because you're too blessed to be stressed.